Um, Trump is playing a losing hand ever since he won in 2016 in terms of national politics. And I think the MAGA, the Make America Great Again crowd, is in a minority. Biden's got an incredibly commendable record, but for better or worse in this day and age in politics, it's all about kind of pointing fingers at and undermining your opponent, at least as much, if not more so, than building yourself up. So I think it's going to be some combination. And I just think the extent that we now know it's Biden against Trump, I think that the anti-MAGA crowd that, again, was preeminent in 18, 20, and 22 is reminded of what exactly it is about Trump that they didn't like and don't want to see back in the White House.
Joe Biden, he used his third State of the Union address to Congress before November's election to really put the boot in to Donald Trump, address the aid crisis in Gaza and defend his record as president. He sought to address concerns about his fitness for office, insisting that ancient ideas rather than old individuals were a threat to America. Before we came on air, I spoke with Richard Goodstein, Democrat, strategist and a former political advisor to Bill and Hillary Clinton. I began by asking Richard for his initial reaction to Biden's address.
He hit it out of the park. He really, really did exactly what he needed to do. And why is that? Because the one issue that the Republicans seem to be basing their entire campaign on was Biden's age and fragility. Well, he didn't look like a fragile person, especially when he went off script. This is not somebody who was just merely reading from a teleprompter, but when he was goaded by the Republicans behaving in ways that members of Congress shouldn't do during a State of the Union, he gave it back every bit as good as he got it, and then some. And you could see from the looks on the faces of the Republicans in the audience, in the House and the Senate, in that chamber, they were like, oh, here we thought we were going to clobber this guy because of his incapacity, and now that's out. What do we do now?
But yet, Richard, questions are there about his age. I spoke to a White House strategist who said to me, look, we do understand people's concerns about his age, but the reality is when we poll him against other rising stars in the Democrats, no one else polls as well as him and nobody sort of cuts through as much as him. Is that true?
Well, all the polls say that. I mean, you've probably seen them yourself, where not just White House polls, but independent and respected pollsters have pitted Biden against Trump, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, against Trump, and Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, against Trump. Whitmer and Newsom were definitely at the top of people's list. If you were to say, well, if Biden were to step aside, who might it be? There's no reason to think that there would be a stronger nominee. And if anything, I think all the evidence points to a party that would be driven apart, that would be fractured between different segments that Biden was able to pull together in 2020, but I think would kind of rear their heads again, and it would not be happy place for the Democrats to be.
I was quite interested in some comments from the pollster Frank Luns, and he conducted a focus group with some swing voters after the speech. Now, he said that some members of the group felt like he was seeking re-election rather than doing a State of the Union address, and that some of them felt that they were being yelled at. What would you say to that critique?
I mean, Frank Luntz is a Republican pollster,
Yeah.
right? I mean, he used to be a roommate of Kevin McCarthy, then the Speaker of the House, and he's been polling for Republicans for decades. So I say that because he's not your kind of best source for unbiased information. And I bet you that the people who said they felt yelled at and that it was too political, probably they might have even called themselves independents, probably vote Republican. I actually think that, Biden didn't call out Trump by name. We know who he meant when he referenced his predecessor. And he did it in a way that I think the American public, if the polling is accurate at all, agrees with where Biden is, that these people who attack police on the steps of the Capitol are not political prisoners. They're not hostages. They're people that try to kind of undermine democracy.
If you were advising Biden, and no doubt you're speaking a lot to his people, how do you take Trump on, given that he has this sort of, whether you like it or not, sort of people see him on one side of politics as a messiah, even all these legal things, his popularity goes up, the money floods in. How does Team Biden take him on?
You're absolutely right. The people in Trump's camp do see him as the Messiah. They worship him. The good news for Biden is that that group maybe constitutes 40%. There's, Trump's gotten 45, 46% the two times he's run. So there are some Republicans probably who don't worship him as a god, but nonetheless would side with him. But I think what we saw in the 2018 congressional elections, 2020 when Trump ran for re-election, even in the 2022 elections with all these candidates who were fairly extreme that Trump endorsed. Trump is playing a losing hand ever since he won in 2016 in terms of national politics. And I think the MAGA, the Make America Great Again crowd is in a minority. Biden's got an incredibly commendable record, but for better or worse in this day and age in politics, it's all about kind of pointing fingers at and undermining your opponent, at least as much, if not more so, than building yourself up. So I think it's going to be some combination. And I just think the extent that we now know it's Biden against Trump, I think that the anti-MAGA crowd that, again, was preeminent in 18, 20, and 22 is reminded of what exactly it is about Trump that they didn't like and don't want to see back in the White House.